Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are taking a closer look into the celebrated life of Della Reese. She is a renowned actress, singer, and minister. Tell me your thoughts about this video in the comments. But as always, don't forget to like, share, watch more videos, and subscribe to the channel.
Available at thehistorymakers.org. A singer, actress, and minister. Her name, Della Reese. Her voice and captivating style have won her audiences worldwide. Her talent and her faith have proved the test of time. The History Makers is proud to present An Evening with Della Reese. And now to our host, actress of stage and screen, Lorraine Toussaint.
I'm so honored to have this opportunity to interview the legendary Della Reese. She has had an amazing career. She is an amazing talent. She is an extraordinary woman. She is Della Reese.
I done laid here, stayed here, I really been here too long, yeah. The summer's gone and the winter time is coming on. I heard nothing that might be a heavy load, because you want to ease on down the road. Good morning, blues, blues, how do you do? Good morning, blues, how do you do? Well, I'm doing all right. Good morning, how are you?
With a career spanning over 60 years, she has made her mark in music, television, and
Thank you so much.
It is such an honor and a privilege to be sitting here with you. I have been a fan and an admirer of yours for many years, since my girlhood in Trinidad, when my mother used to listen to your records. So I grew up with your ballads. And then I became an admirer of yours as an actress, in front of and behind the cameraman. And so I'm very excited to get started. Let's just begin at the beginning. You were born in Detroit, 1931. This was a Detroit before Aretha, before Motown.
I love to say that I'm before Motown. I love to say that.
I said, oh my gosh, you really before Motown?
I'm before Motown. I really am.
What was it like in growing up in Detroit during those times?
Well, it was wonderful because I didn't know we were poor, because everybody around us had just about the same amount of stuff. So I didn't know, and it was wonderful. My mother was loving. My father was loving. He worked pouring steel, literally pouring steel in Detroit Steel Mill. And he worked there for 37 years. And the year that he retired, they built a machine because they said that was not work for a human being to do.
Oh my.
Huh? Well, that kind of made me mad a little bit. My mother scrubbed floors and cleaned houses and sewed. And she was very proud of that. We lived in about a block or so, maybe 2 blocks from what was called Black Bottom. That's where we were all categorized in this little section. And my father stepped out of there and got an apartment 2-3 blocks away, which at that time was a long way step up. And so she was very proud because the women of Grosse Pointe, which was the rich white neighborhood, would bring their clothes to her, because at that time cleaners didn't know how to handle chiffon and silks, and they would bring her clothes to her. So in front of our slum house, be 5 or 6 limousines on Saturday coming to pick up the clothes.
So you come to traveling in limousines
very easily.
Very easily.
I knew what I wanted. I wanted silk dresses and a limousine. That's exactly what I wanted.
Now I know that your youth It was certainly not an easy one. I know you suffered some illness in your youth.
I had rheumatic fever, and they told my mother to take me home and prepare for me to die. And she snatched me up out of the hospital and said, my baby's not dying, I'm not having that, and took me home. And there was a lady named Sister Kenny, and she had come up with some massages and things for people who had polio. And my mother found out what she was doing, hot packs and cold packs at certain intervals of the time, and she began to do that and pray. And I was 3, I'm almost 73 now, so I guess what she did was okay.
You started singing at a very early age.
Well, she says I sang all the time. That's what my mother said.
Yeah.
She said that always I sang. But I had this very bad habit. There was a skylight. We lived in an apartment, and the skylight went through the apartment building. In the skylight, my voice was big. And so I didn't know many songs, so I would sing what I knew. Miss Louise was in the hamburger stand with Mr. Jack. I don't think Mr. Jimmy knows that Miss Louise is with Mr. Jack. I just saw Mr. Jones in the basement with a bottle of 4 Roses, and he's feeling good. And I would sing that. Well, in the skylight, it would go in every house.
Oh my goodness!
The skylight opened so that my father had to nail up the skylight in the bathroom. But I liked to sing. It was fun.
Now, that was very different from the singing you did in the Olivet Baptist Church.
Yes, that was different. That was different. I could remember the lyric, and I could stay in tempo. And so I became the star of the choir. And I just liked it. Whenever I got a chance to sing, I liked that very much.
Well, you were singing solos by the time you were 6, and it wasn't long before your talent was recognized outside of your little town. At some point, the great Mahalia Jackson came to your church.
She came to do a Sunday concert, and what happened was she had a very healthy lady with her. I mean, the lady was healthy. And we had those fans that you get from the funeral homes that you fan with. We didn't have any air conditioner or anything in this little church. And the very healthy lady fainted.
Oh, my goodness.
So they asked for, Reverend Barnes asked, was there a doctor or a nurse or something? And they took the lady into his office. And the doctor came, and he says, nothing wrong with this lady except she's 5 months pregnant. And she was so healthy, she didn't know that she was pregnant. It was just more size, I guess she thought. Her husband refused to let his pregnant wife go with Mahalia on this tour because many people had died in the corridors of hospitals not being allowed to go in and a whole lot of other stuff. And he said, well, no, she's not going down there. And Mahalia said, well, I have these dates that I have to fill. So Reverend Travis said, since Mahalia liked me, he would ask my mother if I could go with her. I was out of school for the summer.
To go with her on tour?
On tour. She had 3 dates. She was going to Lynchburg, Virginia, and a couple of other places. And so he asked my mother if I could go on those jobs with her. And I thought, this is going to be heaven. I'll go and help this old lady out. Well, that's what
Do you see how opportunity knocks? If you're interested in knowing more about this story, I will link a video to this video.
I thought, that's really what I thought. I'm going to help this old lady out, okay? Just before we got ready to get in the car, my mother walked straight into Mahalia's face, and she said, I have a good child here, and I would not let her go with just anybody. But I know that you're called by God and that you'll see to it that you bring me back the good child or a better child that I sent with you.
Della, how old were you?
I was 13. And Mahalia sat in my chest all the time. I couldn't stand her. She made me so sick. She killed all my dreams because I had dreamed of being away from my mama. I was going to shake my thing, have plenty fun. And Mahalia, like, she would do things that made me so angry. I sang as hard as anybody else, and everybody else would go out to dinner. And she would take me home and put me into the hotel and put me in the bed and bring me a bag full of food, which I would never eat. I was just too ornery to eat it. I'd be so hungry, but I wouldn't eat it because I didn't get to go to the restaurant. I just hated her so bad I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand her at all.
Well, as it turns out, that experience marked the first turning point in Della's life. Let's take a look.
Young Della Reese traveled through the South with gospel legend Mahalia Jackson. During this 3-summer tour, Della would learn an important lesson: how to communicate to the audience through song. Throughout this period, she continued to pursue her dream of becoming a psychiatrist. And at the age of 16, she became the first in her family to finish high school. Della enrolled in Wayne State University, but tragedy struck when her mother passed away of a cerebral hemorrhage. Della left college and home and began supporting herself by singing with the Meditation Singers and with odd jobs as a truck driver and receptionist. However, after winning a contest where the prize was a week's gig at the Flame Show Bar, Della Reese's luck changed. She developed her craft by learning from the great artists of the time, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, and Carmen McRae. Della performed in clubs across the Midwest, including the Paradise Resort in Idlewild, Michigan. There, she perfected her performance, and fame soon followed. She recorded an album with the Duke Ellington Orchestra and was featured on radio. Della's success led her to New York, where she joined with her first manager, Lee Maggid, and signed with Jubilee Records. And the rest was history.
Just make it one for my baby and one more for the road.
How sweet is that? So in the 10 years that spanned between you leaving to go on tour with Mahalia, you went from being a gospel singer, you formed the group the Meditation Singers, you toured with them for a few years, and within a short span of time, you go from being the sweet, good girl that Mahalia sat on to the vamp of Savannah. You went from being the gospel singer to not only singing secular songs, but you were singing them in bowling alleys, you were singing them in clubs. What happened?
I got hungry. You see, now if you go to a gospel concert now, it can cost you $50, $100 just to get in the door. But when we were singing the gospel, people, number one, didn't have a lot of money where we were singing, and they would go past all those dollar bills to get to the dimes and nickels and quarters, and it was 5 of us, and when you divide a quarter by 5, you get a nickel. And I just really did get tired of being hungry. Because if we would go on tour, we were blessed if we had gas money to get home. There was never any money for living at all. Then we'd have to come back home, and I would take a job after every singing gig. I'd get me a job so I could eat. I drove a truck for a while. That was a wonderful job. Because as you can see from the pictures, I was smaller then, and I had these really tight pants, and they wear them now. They're back again. The midriff, you know. And I would grab one of those bushel baskets and I would, oh, and somebody said, "Can I help you?" I said, "Please." So they would unpack the truck and pack the truck, and I loved that part. I liked that job. I worked there a long time. Then I drove a taxi cab for a while.
You drove a taxi cab?
I drove a taxi cab. So I made my way. I did what I could to support myself because I wanted to sing.
You ended up at the Oriole Bowling Alley as a waitress.
Well, see,
hostess singer?
They were just beginning to have bowling alleys with entertainment. And they opened one in Detroit to see how it would go. And I went to see about the job singing in this, because I knew the musicians, the trio and everything. And I went to go see about singing. And this man and I had this conversation. I never mentioned singing, and he never mentioned what he wanted to say. And he said, well, at the end of our conversation, he said, okay, be here at 8 o'clock. And he said he would give me $25 a week. I said, fine, I'll be here at 8 o'clock. So I come in at 4, and I rehearse with the trio. So at 8 o'clock, I'm standing there waiting on time to sing. And the door opens, and people come in the door. And he says to me, what are you going to do about those people? I said, I'm going to sing to them when you sit them down. He said, sing? That was the first time the man had ever heard the word sing. He said, sing? He said, I don't need no singer. I need a host to set the people down. I said, well, I'm hired as a singer. He said, set the people down and sing it while you're setting them down. So I said, okay, and he said he'd give me $5 more. I said, okay. And it turned out to be a wonderful thing. It turned out to be a wonderful thing because it was a neighborhood place. So I got to know everybody. And when you walked in the door, I would sing like I used to sing in the skylight. I would sing, here comes Lorraine, isn't she sharp? Look at that dress, all dressed in black, toes showing, bows showing. Well, you know, you come out to the bar, you feel good. Somebody know you like that. So my tips were better than my salary. I got good tips.
Now, this was the time when you were singing at the Flame Show Bar, when you were coming up with the likes of Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan, and Dinah Washington had been on the scene for a while, and Carmen McRae, and you were the new kid on the block. What was that like?
Well, I had to find a place. During that time, the audience would say to you, that's Dinah's song. Don't you have a song you own? You singing Dinah's song. Or you singing... That's Sarah's song. Sarah sings that song, don't you have it? And holler right out at you, you know, and embarrass you. But it was a good thing because it made me find my place. You see, I notice the young people today, very sadly, if you say to them, you sound like Michael Jackson, they say, oh, yeah, I sound just like Michael. You know, somebody...
As we sit here and listen to Della Reese, I want you to think about all the different shows and music that she has sang, you know, the nostalgia of it. And tell me your favorite TV show that she played in. Tell me your favorite song that she sang.
Once said to me that I sounded like Ella, and I must have cried for 3 days. And I love Ella, but I didn't want to be Ella. I wanted to be me. And the fact that they were so definite in the way that they sang made me find a place around in there for me, which I've been able to occupy all these years.
And so magnificently. So you were discovered at some point by a gentleman called Daddy Braggs.
Oh, yeah, Daddy Braggs. Daddy Braggs was a wonderful entrepreneur. He found this place in Idlewild, Michigan, and there were no black resorts, summer resorts. And he opened this summer resort, and it was as wonderful as any I've ever been to. And he would do Idlewild for the summer. Then he would come down to Detroit to the Flame Show Bar, and we would do a show there. And the people began to hear about him, and they began to ask him to come to places around, and so we toured a lot. He was just a wonderful, wonderful entrepreneur. He was at the wrong place at the wrong time to want to do what he wanted to do, because he wanted to do it top notch. He didn't want to just throw something together. He was a marvelous man. Yeah.
Well, the owner
Tell me a little bit about that wonderful entrepreneur that's in your life.
of the Flame Show Bar sends your record to your first manager, Lee Magid. Lee Magid.
Mm-hmm.
And he helps you to get signed with the Jubilee Records, where you released a string of hits. Let's take a look.
Della Reese's recording career took off in the 1950s with hits like In the Still of the Night.
In the still of the night, while the world lies in slumber.
Time After Time, and the classic And That Reminds Me of You.
I hear the sound of music, your favorite kind of music, and that reminds me, dear, of you.
This song was a favorite of Ed Sullivan and his wife, Sylvia. And Della became a regular guest of The Ed Sullivan Show, appearing more than 20 times. Della gained further national recognition with her second gold record, Don't You Know.
Don't you know I have fallen in love with you for the rest of my whole life through.
Her success and friendship with Ed Sullivan led her to become one of the few African Americans to perform in Las Vegas. In the 1960s, Della sang to sold-out audiences and later created a show combining her various musical influences entitled Portrait of Della.
It's somewhere in this period that your brother, R.D., and his wife, Dolores, give you a wonderful blessing.
Absolutely. They had 5 children that they were having a terrible time feeding. And abortion was not as easily come by. She was about to kill herself because she didn't want to bring another child into that family, and everybody was already starving. And so I said to her, I don't have any children. And don't do this. She was like a sister to me. She married my brother when she was 14. So we grew up together. This was like my sister. I said, if you'll just have the baby, I'll be there to catch it. And you'll never have to do anything for it, ever. And so she said, okay. But you know, when you have a baby and you get it in your arms, all that other stuff that you did before doesn't mean anything. The baby looks up at you and you say, I'm not giving this away at all. So she, for 2.5 years, she kept my baby. And well, it was my baby. It really was my baby. And things got progressively worse for them. And so I was working in Chicago at the Regal Theater, and they drove to Chicago and brought my baby. And she said to me, I should have given you the baby when I said I would. So she left the baby in my dressing room in the Regal Theater. And I finished the show, and the minute they walked out of the room, my baby said, Mama? And I said, she's gone. She says, you're my mama. Well, now. I said, you're right. Come on, let's go home. And she was with me until 2 years ago when she made her transition. The greatest thing in my life. Absolutely.
That's a blessing.
Oh, more
to
than
both
that.
of you.
More than that. She left me her son, a grandson, and she left her spirit in him. He has that. She had a very loving, caring spirit, and she left some of that in him, and so it's like I have him, but I have some of her still too, so that's good. Yeah.
And he's a Morehouse man.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Ed Sullivan.
Well, he was very important in my life, and people don't give him as much credit as they should. He was a sports announcer, and he was something you could make fun of if you wanted to. But he was good in my life, and that reminds me was adapted from the Autumn Concerto, and that was a love song of he and his wife. He would say, I want you to sing 2 songs this time. And I'd say, okay, so I'd get an arrangement. I'd bring the arrangement. We'd rehearse the arrangement. He said, that's so lovely. And about 5 minutes before time to go on, he would send somebody down to say, just doing that reminds me. Just doing that reminds me. So I said, okay, I'll just do that. But he took me to Vegas. He was the first person that took me to Vegas.
Were those times as wild as
yes.
we've been led to believe they
absolutely.
were?
Absolutely. Vegas stayed open, literally stayed open. The last show went on at 5 o'clock in the morning. Oh my goodness. Absolutely, absolutely did. It was good. It's not Vegas anymore. If you were a gambler and you went to Vegas and they had slot, if you spent this much or spent that much or spent the other much, nothing cost you anything because they didn't want you to spend any money on the room. They wanted all the money to come across the table because the money you spent on the room, they had to report, and the money that went across the table, it just went across the table. We don't know where it went on across the table. You see what I'm saying? So everything was free. The food was free. If you sat down at the table, the drinks were free, as long as you kept gambling. You see, if you came there more than once and you sat with the maitre d', when he saw you, he knew you. He knew what you drank, what table you liked, because tipping was the thing. You see, you come in, you hand the maitre d' a little money, he never forgot it. You could sit in there forever. You see, he knew your table. He knew he'd have your drinks sent to your table. It was a very royal affair. It was, now I went there and the man wanted to pin a tag on me and say, you can get 2 drinks upstairs. That's not Vegas.
No.
That's not Vegas. It was a marvelous time and place in life. It was wonderful. It was glamorous. They paid good money. Everything about it was exciting. Not like it was now, and it was only for people who came to gamble, who came to spend money. Now there's a circus there for the kids, and you know, none of that was there. It was all about, you change clothes 4 times a day. You got up and you put on the swimming suit, see, and you laid out for a little bit. Then for lunch, you put on the sunless back dress, and you had a little lunch on the patio. Then about 5 o'clock, you dressed for dinner, and you had a little dinner. And then if you're going out the night, you put on the formal wear and the furs and stuff. Oh, it was heavenly. I loved it. I just loved it. I loved it. The last time I was there, I never saw so many blue jeans in my life. It was terrible.
When you were coming up with the likes of Lena and Sarah and Carmen and Billy Eckstein, when Lena did her show on Broadway, Lena talks about this level of segregation and racism. Carmen talks about it. Sarah talks. They all talk about it. Did you ever get together? Did you talk? Did you go out?
In Vegas, that we were bound. I was there for 9 years. Vegas, Reno, and Tahoe. I played that circuit for 9 years. And Billy Daniels would be there, or Billy Eckstein would be there. Sarah would be there, and maybe I would be there. So there would be 4 of us. And the rest of the city was a white city. So the four of us clung together. We ate together, we talked together, we were together. Maybe the next time I went, it would be Ella there and Nat or somebody else, Sammy, and we were bound together. We sort of protected each other in that war field that we were in. I could sing there, but I could not eat there. I could not sleep there. I could not enter the front door there. I had to come in through the kitchen. And one night, I was sharing the dressing room with a lady named Blossom Seeley. She and her husband did ballroom dancing. And I ordered a hamburger and in the dressing room. And this was about 8:15. So now it's time to do the second show. And I still haven't had anything to eat. And Blossom is walking the hall. She's just irate about it. And Mr. Sullivan comes along and he said, "What in the world is wrong with you, Blossom?" She said, "This child ordered something to eat at 8:15 and they haven't brought her anything to eat, and she hasn't had anything to eat all night, and it's time for her to go on again." And he said, "Well, why didn't they bring?" She said, "I don't know why it didn't bring, but they didn't bring it." And he got on the phone and he says, "How do you want the hamburger?" So I told him, and it couldn't have been 5 minutes. The hamburger was there. Now, I'm grateful for the hamburger. So I'm just going to take a few bites because I opened the show, and I'm going to go and open the show. So I'm biting, I'm chewing, I'm putting my dress. He said, "Hold it." Mr. Sullivan said, "Hold it. Sit down. Eat the hamburger." And I said, "Well," he said, "sit down and eat the hamburger. If they'd have brought it in the first place, you'd been through by now."
You have to admit that that's a stand-up guy right there. Let me know, paint me a picture in the comments. What was Vegas like when you was last there?
And between shows, every night, we were there for a month. Between shows every night in Las Vegas, Nevada, he took me to every restaurant on the Strip and sat me down in the middle. I could clean out a house. He and his wife would sit me down in the middle, and people start paying their checks and leaving. It didn't bother him a bit. We would sit there and eat. The next night, he took me to another place. We would sit there and eat. He took me all over Las Vegas, Nevada, and made them open the doors for me and let me sit down and eat.
Yes, he did. Absolutely love it.
You appeared on that show over 20 times.
Yes.
That show led to your appearances on the Perry Como Show, the Tonight Show, the Mike Douglas Show. In fact, you appeared on the Mike Douglas Show so many times.
He used to have a guest host or hostess that would come on and stay on for the week. And so I went several times, and Woody Frazier was his director and producer at that time. And so I was working in Chicago at a club, and Woody came to the club, and he said, just like this, he said, "How would you like to do a television show?" I said, "Fine, thank you very much." He said, "Okay." And he left the dress. I never thought, because he was a clown, a kidder, I never thought any more about it. 3 weeks later, he appeared in Los Angeles with a director, a set designer. He was going to produce, and they all knocked at my door. And "What are you doing here, Woody?" "We're fixing to do the television show." "What television show?" "I asked you in Chicago, did you want to do a television show?" "Well, yeah, I want to do a television." "Well, this is the one we're doing. Now, what we're going to do is, and went right into it. It happened just like that.
It wasn't just like that, because Della, you were the first black woman to have a talk show.
Yes.
On television.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I really didn't know that.
But you know, Lorraine, sitting here now, it's almost 73, looking back, I see what God had in mind for me. I was supposed to open the doors so that the other people could get in to do what they had to do. I was supposed to open the door to sit down on television. We used to go on television and we could sing our hit records, then they'd close the curtain. But I did a radio show with Merv Griffin And we got to be really good at singing together and friendly together. And so when he got his television show, he invited me to do the television show. And it was funny, because when I got through singing, he said, "Come on over here, Del." And you could hear the silence. Everybody, the band, everybody. "Oh, no, don't do that." He said, "Come on, sit down." And I kind of hung back, too, a little bit. And he said, "Come on and sit down." And I sat down, and we started to talk. And we got some laughs and everything. And he started, after that, whoever came black on the show, he would call them over and tell them to sit down. And so it opened the door for the other shows to do that too. Yeah, that was his plan for me. I was the first woman to host Johnny Carson's show. And after that, Joan Rivers went, and Diana Ross went, and the ladies went to do the television show. It's good to look back on. I like it now. I didn't like it at first, but I like it now. I like it now.
While you were shooting your show, Della, tragedy struck again. You had a near fatal accident.
I was doing the Della show, and I walked through a plate glass window, and I lost 7 pints of blood. I didn't have but 9, and had 1,000 stitches. And they've told me I was going to die so many times. I may not die at all, because it's. For about 4 weeks, I had this leg on a pulley traction thing. And so now the gentleman's going to take the cast off. And I'm praying. He said, "Now, I don't expect you to jump up off this table and walk." He says, "And what I'm going to do may hurt, but if you can feel it, what I'm going to do with therapy, you can walk again." So he straightened out my leg, and I jumped straight up off the table, laying down, like that. And he said, "You're very lucky, Miss Reese. You're going to be able to walk." I said, "No, I'm not lucky." I said, "God was holding me in his hands." He said, "Well, I don't mean no harm, but he almost dropped you this time." That's the truth. That's the real truth. That's the truth.
Oh my goodness. Angels were about to enter your life. Let's see a clip.
Though Della continued singing in the 1970s, it was her TV career that soared with starring roles in Chico and the Man and Flo's Place. Della Reese also continued to be a favorite on late-night television programs such as The Tonight Show.
That would be known as a rafter shaker.
Is that what that is?
Yeah. You come on so strong. Love to hear you sing.
I like good, happy songs, optimistic songs.
Yeah,
I like that kind.
It was at this time that she began to re-examine her life and grow more spiritual. She met her future husband and manager, advertising executive Franklin Lett. And through a chance encounter in Chicago, she was led to the teachings of the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman. This meeting would change Della's life forever. Her faith was once again tested with a life-threatening brain aneurysm. Della overcame that trial, and her spirituality was strengthened. Della evolved through the 1980s and 90s with her becoming an ordained minister and forming Understanding Principles for Better Living. Della also garnered starring roles in television and movies like The Royal Family and Harlem Nights. But it was her role as Tess on the groundbreaking show Touched by an Angel that allowed her to touch the lives of millions.
Is this a giving up speech?
Well, yes.
Get in the car. The cavalry's on the way. And here they come. Get in the car.
Let me know, please let me know your favorite episode of Touched by an Angel.
Hold on to your halo, baby.
Della Reese has published 3 books, including her autobiography, Angels Along the Way.
If you're interested in those books, I will make sure they link in the description box below.
Della's signature style has created an enduring legacy.
Touched by an Angel was a monumental hit. When I was thinking about your career as I was preparing for this, I thought most people would be happy with one of Della's careers. You went from being a gospel singer, you went into Vegas as a Vegas personality, and now, almost in the second half of your life, you become an actress. Not just an actress, but an actress on a hit television show, the hit television show for CBS for years.
Which part of Della Reese's life would you consider to be your favorite?
How did you make this transition?
The thing about CBS was they wanted to give everybody else a raise and didn't want to give me a raise, and I couldn't be still for that for a minute. You know, what you work for is to get a hit television show and all the perks that go with it. And there's like doing this. Because every day I was at work, I had my lines, I knew where I was supposed to be, I was on my mark, and I kept saying, you're going to have to give me some money, you're not going to run me away, you're going to have to give me some money, my money that you owe me, you're going to have to pay me. And frankly, he kept saying it too. So they finally gave it to me. When I was doing Chico and the Man, see, I got put out of every church in Detroit as a child. I did. I really did. Because they would tell me things that didn't make sense to me. They would tell me that I was made in the image likeness of God. And then they would tell me that I was a wretch and a sinner. And then I would say, is God a wretch and a sinner? Then they send me home to my mama, because I wasn't supposed to ask that question. They would tell me, with God, all things are possible. And I said, they said, they're not going to let you do that. Nobody's ever done that. You can. And then I would say, well, I can do it because all things are possible with God. And they send me home to my mom. I wasn't supposed to say that. I wasn't supposed to ask those questions. So for years, I was a television church watcher. And I was doing a show called The Last Minstrel Show in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And the man who was doing hair and makeup would come in and talk to me about his love life and what should he do. And I would just tell him the truth. And he would always say to me, you so much like Johnny Coleman. You just like Johnny Coleman. And so I said, what's a Johnny Coleman? So we did another show same time next year in Chicago. And he insisted that I go to Johnny Coleman's church. And I go there, and here's a woman saying everything that I've always believed all of my life, that God loves me, he thinks I'm the best thing he ever made, he will never leave me or forsake me, that he I'm sitting there in wonder that I didn't know her before. And all the while I was there in Chicago, every chance I got, I would go to hear what she had to say. And so when I went back, the show was over and I went back to Los Angeles to finish Chico and the Man. I would get on the plane on Friday nights after the show, fly to Chicago, take classes on Saturday, and then on Sunday go to service and then fly back to Los Angeles, because this was food that I could eat. What she was saying was all right. I could live with it. I felt that it was true. And so I became a teacher. I never intended to be a preacher. I intended to be a teacher. And I was teaching this class, and this woman who came to the class, her husband was dying of terminal cancer. He was just angry about everything. He couldn't give you a decent hello. And she insisted that he come to the classes. And he came to the classes, and bit by bit, he was there about 8 months. They learned to be lovers again. When he finally made his transition, she asked me to do the service. Well, the minister wouldn't let me in the pulpit. So I said, okay. I stood on the floor, and I did the service. I explained to them that death was not the worst thing in the world, that it was just a transportation from one place to another. I don't even remember everything I said, but the people calmed down and they stopped crying. Well, the minister, he got up. He said, those are pretty words she said to you, but I want you to know all y'all gonna be laying here at one time. Y'all better get it together. And he got them to cry until they was hollering and screaming. and running up and down the aisle. Well, the lady was irate, and she asked the minister, said, please don't come to the graveyard. She said, I don't want you there. Don't come there.
So you performed the service in the graveyard?
Absolutely, but now I don't know that I've buried this man legally because I'm not a minister. See, so I get on the phone immediately to Johnny, and I said, I just buried somebody. I don't think I had the right to bury nobody. And I asked her, I said, will you come out here and say what needs to be said over this man, because I done put him in the ground and I didn't know what to say. And so she said, well, what did you say? I told her. She says, well, you have papers. You're a accredited teacher, and you can do that. And she said, but you really need a minister there. And so I told God, because I'm smarter than he is, we need a minister out here, and I'll find a place for the minister to stay, and I'll pay the minister, and I'll see that the minister is taken care of, because Johnny said we need a minister out here. And there was silence. God talks to me. There was silence. There was nothing. I said, we have to have a minister. I don't know why, but when he doesn't answer right away, I repeat it. Like he's too dumb to know what I'm talking about.
He can't hear you.
You know, so we all do that. You know you do. And so he said to me, do it yourself. And I said, I'm not the one for, I'm not the one for this. I'm not. He said, do it yourself. So I went back to school and I got my license to be a minister.
There's a wonderful person that you worked with, and I know you're very, very fond of, Red Fox.
That was my buddy. That was my friend. And people really didn't know Red. This is another thing that amused me. Red sold at least 5 million copies of all of his records, okay? Everybody had the record, but Red was dirty.
What you mean dirty?
Well, everybody said, oh, Red Fox is dirty, but he sold 5 million records. He wasn't dirty by himself. Somebody bought the record. Somebody else was dirty too. I know I was. I had a stack of them. But he was a wonderful, a loving man. The reason he didn't have any money was if you came up to him and you said, I'm having it hard, Red, I need a little money. He would just run his hand in his pocket, whatever came out was yours. And he always had a pocket full of money. He was a giver. He was a lover. He was a gentleman. He was a kind man. And what he did on the stage was his act.
Tell me in the comments, do you think it was possible that some of those people that asked him for money took advantage of him, took advantage of his good heart?
Was not Red.
Your manager, Franklin Lett.
Yeah.
Tell us about that relationship.
It's wonderful.
With this new manager of yours.
He is absolutely my everything. Absolutely my everything. I have been with this man for 25 years, and I don't have one thing to complain about. And I appreciate it so much because every other relationship I didn't have nothing but complaints. So this is so wonderful. He's my friend, he's my lover, he's my running buddy, he's my husband, he's my manager. He is absolutely my everything.
Can you honestly say the same thing about your spouse? Is your spouse your lover, your everything? Let me know in the comments.
Della, you came up in a time when, as you said, you could sing in places and you couldn't eat there. How have you dealt with racism through the years?
When Cape Kennedy used to be Cocoa Beach, Florida, I went to Cocoa Beach, Florida, and what happened was a man sent the contract to Lee Maggot I signed the contract. The man, when he got the contract, he signed the contract and inserted a clause that I would do a show at the high school for the black people, and I would work in his club every night. Now, I don't know about this. I go to Cocoa Beach, Florida. I do the first show, and he comes and says, "Are you ready to go?" And I think I was only going to do one show that night, and we're going to eat or something. And he takes me to the high school, and in the yard of the high school are buses from all over Florida, and they have signs that said, "Della, don't segregate us, don't do this stuff." I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know anything about this. So we go into the school auditorium, and I ask, "What is this?" in no uncertain terms. And he says, "Well, it's right here in the contract." I said, "It wasn't in the contract when I signed the contract." He says, "Are you trying to say?" I said, "I'm not trying to say. I'm saying to you, I never signed a contract that said that, and I'm not going to do this." And I said, "If they can't come in the club, I'm leaving in the morning." And I went out in the yard, and I said to the people, I didn't know anything about this, but he is, and the gentleman, I've got to give him credit. He said, "I didn't know it was that many black people that wanted to come to my club." He said, "I'm just trying to make a living, and if they fill up my club, it's fine with me." And that's the truth. And so I went out in the yard and I told them, we're not going to do this, but you're welcome to come to the club and anytime you want to. And we started getting calls about they were going to bomb the club. They were going to kill my baby. They were going to kill me and all the musicians, and they kept us prayed up, I tell you that. And I stayed the term of the engagement, but every night it got less and less. Our people never came. All those people that were out in the yard never came. And when I left, when my car pulled out, the man was hanging up a sign that he was closed. So he went out of business.
How have you dealt with this through the years?
To really answer your question, I was going to school. I was in grade school. And this girl, her name was Marlene, and she didn't like me. And so she was always saying something nasty to me, you know. And one day she called me a nigger. I didn't know what that was, but the way everybody giggled when she called me that, I knew something about it wasn't right. And so I went home to my mother and I asked my mother, "What is a nigger?" And she said, "One who's black of heart." And I said, "Am I a nigger?" She said, "Are you black of heart?" I said, "No, I'm a Christian." She said, "If you're not black of heart, you can't be a nigger. And if somebody calls you a nigger, they're stupid. So know that they're stupid, get away from them as quick as you can, and go on." And that went right in, me being that young and her being that definite and her just saying it. And you know what I mean? Not a long dissertation. This is the truth. That's the way she was. She was direct. People say their parents are strict. My mother was direct. This is it. This is the way it is. That's it. And it did something for me. Not that I was unaware that it was going on, but it never touched my soul. It never made me feel less because I was black. I've always been proud because I'm black. It never made me feel I couldn't do anything because I'm black. I felt I could do everything because I'm black. She straightened me out right there with that, you see. And it helped during my life. Whatever I can do to change the situation, I'm for doing that. But it hasn't stopped me. It hasn't bound me in any way.
I took courage in your stance.
Wonderful.
I certainly did, and I thank you. Della, what, if you had to say what your legacy was, how would you like to be remembered?
I would just like to be remembered.
Do you remember her? Let me know in the comments.
But let me say this. I've been blessed. I've had different generations. I had the generation that grew up with me. Then I had their children because their children heard my music in their mother and father's houses.
That was me.
Then I had their children's children because I started in television. And so their children's children got to know me. One day we were on the elevator and a lady of my generation got on with her grandchild, and she wanted to impress the child with who I was, and she said, "This is Della Reese. She's a great singer." And the little girl said, "No, that's Mr. T's mama." That's the part I was playing. Wow. That she didn't know about me singing. She was about 9. She didn't know nothing about that. To her, I was Mr. T's mama. That's who I was. So I have all these, when I'm saying all these generations of people who remember me for different things. You played Don't You Know. I can't tell you how many people across the world use that to get married on. That's a wonderful thing to have. People come up to me and say, "I've been married to him 42 years, and we got married on that song about love." All songs are about love. What song? You know, then I have to figure, that's the one. That's the one it is. And that's a marvelous thing.
This evening has been truly an honor.
Thank you.
It has been a privilege, and it has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for the contributions that you have made, not just to the world, but to me personally, because the thing that I'm clear about is that I wouldn't be sitting here were it not for you, were it not for the paths that you have. Praise the Lord. That's so sweet. I want to thank you for your life. Your career are indeed a testimony to your talent, your hard work, and your walk in faith. We have not only watched this woman endure, we have watched her triumph. On behalf of those who have gone before us and those who will come after us, I thank you, Della Reese.
God bless you. God bless.
Ladies and gentlemen, Della Reese.
This is the part of the segment that I need to talk about. It's something that she mentioned that reminded me of my childhood. And I want to invite you into my life a little bit. But first, I want you to take some time and hit like on this video. Show this video some love, please. Remember in the video where she talked about how she would say all things were possible because of God, and she would get in trouble and get sent home and all of that? It reminded me of a conversation that I would have with my mother as well as with my uncle. I would constantly tell them, I'm perfect. They'd be like, "Oh, no, no human is perfect." I'm like, no, I'm perfect. And I would constantly say it. But one day, my uncle comes to me and was like, "What makes you think you're perfect?" And I asked him, I said, "Isn't everything that's created by God perfect?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, am I created by God?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "But therefore I'm perfect." He said, No, it don't work like that." I said, "Yes, it does. I am created by him. Therefore, anything he creates, anything he touches is perfection. I am perfection." And I remember telling my mother that over and over. The crazy thing about it is, to this day, I still say that. And my mother and my uncles and everybody in the family just look at me like, "Oh, whatever." It's to the point where I explained it to my wife. And my wife, she now says it. I'm perfect. We perfect. And I'm letting you know, you're perfect. You're created by God. And anything that he touches, anything that he creates is perfection. So please take this time. As we walk down memory lane, we're looking at Della Reese. I want you to subscribe to this channel. I want you to like, comment, and I want you to also watch more videos.